Karen Frankel here with you on Friday afternoon to get you all drawing, and I think by now all of you are drawing already. So to keep you all drawing, I've got some fantastic information again for you this Friday. Today's all about perspective. We've got a carton there. When it comes to perspective of a box, and we're looking at the three sides, and I will definitely draw this for you to show you in much more detail. We can see the sides of the box. So in this case we can see the side, and we can see that side, and we can see the top. And as a number of you have experienced, getting the top at the right angle because of the foreshortening is pretty difficult. And what it really relies on is these angles over here. So that angle, that angle, that angle. So if we got all of these lines correct, then we'll get a correct box. And of course, those angles there. Now, so depending on your view, where you're looking at that box, if you're looking at it at eye level, all you will see is the straight box. As soon as it's below your eye level, you will see the bottom of it. And if it's higher than eye level, you will see underneath. I'm just tilting that a little bit for you because I'm not quite sure if you can see that in the camera. So when your eye level is above, that means the horizon line, and the horizon line becomes crucial when we're talking about perspective. All of these things that I'm talking to you about applies to any perspective that you are drawing, whether it's boxes or streets or landscapes and mountains in the distance. It's all actually the same perspective, and we're talking about depth, the distance between the camera and me, not height and not width, depth. Okay, so we also do have height and width, but primarily it's depth. So if you look again at our example on the screen there, I'll change it to another color. This side of the box is going away from you. That side of the box is going away from you, so it's going into the depth. And this corner here is the closest corner to you. So once again, with our little box, oh, I've got a handy little lens box here. So that corner is closest to you, and these sides are going away from you into the depth. So it's always depth that we're talking about. Now, the only difference between drawing boxes and buildings and square things, things that our brain will tell you are square and right angled, but the angles actually aren't. The only difference between that and perhaps drawing a landscape and showing the perspective, the depth in a landscape, is that when we're talking about parallel lines, so we know that physically those two lines are parallel. As those parallel lines move away from you, there is a rule that applies to those lines moving away from you, whereas if they are horizontal and just the width, or just vertical like that, and they're not moving away from you, then they are indeed visually parallel. Why am I saying visually? Because we know that this box, all of the edges are parallel to each other. So the box on the screen, these edges, these straight up and down edges are parallel to each other. But I promise you, even though physically the box is doing that, are physically parallel, visually they are not. I've got a piece of paper here that I've been using to measure over the weeks. And if I measure how tall that edge is, now just as a reminder, whenever I'm talking about visual measuring, I'm only ever talking about proportions, visually comparing one size to another. I'm never talking about measuring it in centimeters. Now, I know that you can get your ruler out and measure that at 6 centimeters and compare that to something else, but it's not really that handy, especially when you're measuring something in front of you and you've got your pencil up there and you're moving your thumb around. You don't really care about millimeters or centimeters. So I'm going to put my piece of paper matching the top corner there, and I'm going to put a little bit mark to say, okay, that's how high it is on that edge. It's not going to be very much bigger because this is nearly horizontal. Can you see that it is that much? It's a bit tiny. It's that much smaller, bigger. Now I want to compare the other corner, and I know from experience that this side is going to be smaller than that side because that angle is sharper, and I will show you that lovely trick on how to look at those angles in a few minutes. So this time I'm going to just measure this front angle. Is that the right place? So can you see I've measured from that corner down to the bottom corner? And if I compare it to there, you can see that this corner finishes there. So there are very small margins. So this is only a tiny bit shorter than this, and that is only a tiny bit shorter than that, but they are definitely smaller. Now, one of the ways I have a look at my work or students' work in the classroom to see whether their boxes are, the perspective is working correctly, I put my pencil there, so going along one edge, and I put my pencil, another pencil, across that edge. I'm not sure if you can see with such a small, being small there and being big there, but basically those pencils are slowly getting closer and closer together. So that gives us our first rule. This is regardless of parallel lines, and that is that as things move away from us or closer to the horizon, things appear smaller. They don't get smaller, so physically that side of the box is not smaller than that. Things appear smaller as they move away. Or things appear smaller as they move closer to the horizon. The horizon equals your eye level. How does that translate when we go to boxes? As this box side moves away from us, that side appears smaller and that side appears smaller. But the rule with perspective, if you with box perspective, in other words, with parallel line perspective, parallel lines appear to converge at the horizon. Eventually, off the screen, those two lines will converge, and that will be the horizon for the person taking the photograph, for that box. If you are, this is the typical one that we see is the railway line going off the edge, or telegraph poles. If that's the horizon and we've got the parallel lines of a railway, and they will appear to converge. We know that railway lines remain parallel, and the bits across everything gets smaller. That's what happens with parallel lines. The difference between single point perspective and 2-point perspective. Why does it matter? It's actually quite simple. This little pretend railway line that I've got going off there, and if I've got telegraph poles at the side, this is all a single point perspective because it's a single vanishing point. So the vanishing point is where these appear to vanish on the horizon at the eye level, and all of these are vanishing at the same vanishing point. However, when it comes to our box, we have 2 vanishing points, and that's all there is to it. That's what single point and double point perspective is. So what are our 2 parallel lines creating our single points? Our double points. So those 2 parallel lines will go, and eventually they will meet up at a vanishing point over, way over here. And those 2 lines going off that way, they will also eventually meet. Believe it or not, they are also going to meet at the same horizon. They don't have different horizons, they just have different vanishing points. The reason they don't have different horizons is because horizon is eye level, and if I'm the one looking at the box, I've only got one horizon, and those parallel lines will go up towards my horizon. I know they'll go up because I can see the top of the box, which means my horizon is above it, and the lines will go up to it. One of the biggest problems with drawing boxes and vanishing points is in fact the same as when I showed you the parallel lines on that box, is that this goes away so gently that it only comes to a vanishing point way off the page. And lots of people expect things to vanish on the horizon that they've drawn on the page. Unless you are constructing a box like I am going to, just for the sake of demonstration, it is highly unusual for the angles to be so bent that they actually do meet at the horizon on the page instead of off the page. So I'm going to put my imaginary horizon through the middle of the page. Can you see that this corner is closest to you and these corners are furthest away, and that those are parallel because they're physically parallel, but as they go away from this camera that you're looking at, those lines are beginning to converge, and that is smaller than that. So that's a lovely, lovely example. And the same thing is happening there. That line is shorter than that line. But if I were to draw this, these lines would go, as I said, they would converge way, way off the paper that you are looking at. So I'm going to draw an imaginary box that's even steeper than that. And I'm going to start off with drawing that corner that is closest to me. So what I'm going to depict is a box that is halfway up the eye level. So my eye level is in the middle there. So you can't see the top and you can't see the bottom. Okay? So I'm going to draw my front angle. Remember, I haven't shown you angles yet. I'm just demonstrating this principle. And I'm going to put one line going straight out to my to a vanishing point, to the horizon, and I'm going to put another line going straight to the horizon, and they are converging at the horizon. And I'm going to make this one much further away, so you can see that that distance is longer than that distance. This is just for my example. Now I am going to put the corner that's furthest away on that side, and I'm going to put a corner that's furthest away on that side. So in this example, you can see that this box that I've drawn, it could actually be a building. So when it comes to buildings, if we are standing next to a cube or to a building, your eye level is somewhere above the bottom of the building, most clearly, and it's also lower than the top of the building. So if you can imagine this big cement box that you're standing next to, and you can't see the top and you can't see the bottom, that orange that I've just put over there, that's pretty much what you'll see. Okay, that is if your eye level is halfway. I'm now going to move that front corner down, and I'm going to put it up to the same horizon, not necessarily the same vanishing point. Yep, that's working. Now it becomes very confusing, so please bear with me. I'm going to put the back sides in. So can you see now on this bottom one that we can still see two sides, that one and that one, but we also need to see the top of this box. It's going to overlap that one. So bear with me for a sec. Now we can see the top of the box, because the box is lower than our eye level. So that red line is our constant eye level, and this box is now below our eye level. If this box were now raised above the horizon line, but above your eye level, you would see underneath it. So I can actually just do that, and I can now see underneath the box and not on top. How does this now relate to when you want to draw buildings and when you want to draw boxes? This little mall, all of these lines are going down towards that central vanishing point that's in the middle there, right? However, not only do we have a vanishing point there, all these lines are converging at that vanishing point. So most of this is single point perspective. However, have a look at this building here. Now, here's a little tip for you. If you can see more than one side, then the angle cannot be horizontal. Sometimes I've seen parallel lines there, and then that on the box. That cannot be, because if these lines are parallel, as I showed you with the box, right, then you wouldn't be able to see the either side. As soon as you can see a corner, then these lines are no longer, that one's definitely not parallel, so that's fine, but this one can no longer be parallel. So that is an incorrect drawing. As soon as you can see two sides, these cannot be parallel. Good thing to remember. So getting back to this this building. Looks like it's leaning over a little bit actually. And I was going to say, because it does actually look parallel, doesn't it? It looks absolutely flat. If this is where our eye level is and vanishing point is, because we know all the parallel lines are vanishing there, can you see that angle there? I wonder if that's going to vanish at the same place. Pretty much. However, this side of the building, that's gonna, we can't see the bottom of it, but that's gonna go off and we're gonna have angles at the top there. So that's where you get your 2-point perspective. Now I'm going to show you the trick. As you can see, that is a clock face. With a permanent marker, you are going to trace off what's on there. Now you don't actually have to trace around the edge. You don't need that circle, but if you wanted it, you could just put a plate down and trace around that. What you mostly need is, in fact you absolutely need, and this time you are going to use a ruler, is to draw right through the middle from, there you go, from 12 to 6. You might need to tape your plastic down. It is also easier if your plastic is a sheet of acetate rather than a flimsy document sleeve. The reason is because you can use this tool perfectly on photographs, but you can absolutely use this tool visually holding it up between you and whatever you're looking at if it's a stiff piece of acetate. This tool is an ish tool. It's going to help you estimate angles. It is not a protractor, so it's not a mathematical tool, but it will help you when you are looking at angles so that you can draw them, because that is the most difficult thing about drawing perspective. This is how you use this tool. You put your 12-6 line on a vertical line of your box. Now let me say that most of these buildings and boxes and that sort of thing are going, the verticals are going to remain parallel. If you are standing in the city and you're looking up at a tall skyscraper, that parallel line will also converge, okay? But for our purposes, when you're drawing from this distance away, you can draw those parallel and it won't influence your drawing. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my straight vertical line between the 12 and the 6 on that front corner, and I'm putting the center of the clock at that bottom angle there. Now I can tell what angle those two lines are. The angle of that line is about 9:30. Can you see that? It's a little bit past 9:30. It's probably 20 to 10. So that angle is a little bit bigger than that angle. That one there, going up that side, that is about 10 to 2. So can you see that I'm saying it's about 10 to 2? It might be 9 minutes to 2, it might be 8 minutes to 2. And in fact, if you put a protractor down on your photograph, you'll see exactly how many degrees are like that. But for purposes of our drawing, that's going to be fine. So how do we translate that onto our page? Well, if I can find my pencil, I'm going to go the front of my box. I've put a million lines there, don't worry about that. And I'm going to, I can put that actually physically on my page, and I can say, okay, that's where that one's going to go, or that's where that one's going to go, take that away and put my angles on. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to simply have a look at the time, so that if this clock, if that's 12:06, that's 9:03, and I go, okay, it's about 45 degrees, so if that's 1 o'clock, and that's 2 o'clock, and that's 3 o'clock, where is it relative to, whoops, something like that, 10 to 2. So you work out what this time is here, and you work out what that time is on that one. And you do this on all of the angles. So now I will rub out the red line. If I put the center of the clock with that straight up and down on the top corner, you can see that this line here, remember before, this was closer to the 10. It was at about 20 to 10. Can you see that? But if we move it up here, now it's closer to 9:30 or closer to the 9. And that one is pretty much exactly at 2 o'clock. So they are not the same angles. And you can use this clock face on all of these angles. So that one there, that angle is just before 8 o'clock. Put it on that corner there. If that was 2 o'clock from that point, it's going to follow through, and look, it's 8 o'clock from that point. But that one is, about 9:25. So you can see that you can move this all the way around and find what these angles are. So if you know your clock face, you don't have to try and imagine, is it 45 degrees, is it 30 degrees? And the best thing of all with this, especially if you are working with an acetate sheet, a stiff sheet, is that with one eye shut, you can visually hold that above. So I'm pretending that that photograph is the real thing. You can put it vertically like that, and you can say, what angle is, let's have a look at that. And we'll put our clock face there. So we're looking at that corner there, right? I'm not actually putting it down. I'm pretending that I'm holding it in front of the actual building. And I can see that that's pretty much at 1 o'clock, that angle. And if I move it down, the one below, so that one was at 1 o'clock, but this one, let's have a look. So I'm now putting the center of a clock below. That one is at about 1:10. So let's see how accurate that was. So yep, that's about 1 o'clock. And at the bottom there, that one's more than 1:10. Actually, it's nearly 1:30. So that is a fabulous tool to help you check out the angles. Don't worry when it's not perfectly accurate, because visually looking through this is not ever going to be as accurate as looking at a protractor and going it's 35 degrees, 36 degrees, 37 degrees, as long as it helps you to get a reasonable drawing of your box or your building. To get the top of the box, these angles are going to be quite shallow, a lot shallower than we imagine them to be. So often we draw things right up there when we're drawing, because we are getting confused with your brain saying that these tops are bigger than they are. The other thing that you can do, and you're perfectly used to doing this, to add into your drawing of these boxes, is to measure the lengths of things. But try not to measure along the actual size of don't tilt this at an angle, because if you've got the angle wrong, you won't know how tilted that is. So rather go from a straight edge to a straight edge, so you know that that's straight. So that's the short side, and then you can say how many short sides are in the long side. So I'm going, okay, there's 1 1/2. Can you see how I've done that? So that's the same as when you hold your pencil up. You know, when you visually hold your pencil up and you go, okay, how big is that compared to that? Always do it on the horizontal, because you don't know how bent your pencil is. And if your pencil is bent that much, that will be bigger than if your pencil is bent that much. Whereas we pretty much know how to hold our pencils up horizontally. How big is that side compared to that side? It's about 1 2-ish. I can now go, well, if that's how big I'm making it on my drawing, then it's going to be 1 2. I remember it was just under 2, and therefore this line carries on going, and the edge of the box is there. How tall is that line? Remember, that line's shorter than that line compared with that. Well, that was that. So I'm going to use the same measurement, and it's going to go 1 1/4. What do you reckon? So watch this video as many times as you like to try and get this into your head. So that's 1, and we're going to go, it's 1 1/4. So it's going to stop there. If that's correct, then this angle should be the same. Now, what I didn't do was compare it to that, did I? If I come back to my box, that top corner, that was 2 o'clock. Let's see with my measuring if that is also 2 o'clock. No, it's not. The reason is because I didn't compare that to that. I only compared that to that. So that's side number 1. How many of those fits this one? And it's 1 and a smidge. See, a smidge is a real word. So now if I go back to my drawing, that's 1. Can you see I made it way too big? 1 and a smidge should be there. Now, if I do that, let's see if that's 2 o'clock. It does work. So you use a combination of measuring the sides, knowing that the back furthest away vertical is shorter than the front vertical, and having a look with your clock face tool to check that these angles are correct. So that one's at 2 o'clock and that one is at about 10 to 2. If I now go to this side, I want to see how tall that is compared to one I've already got. And I think I remember saying that it's a little bit shorter than that one. Can you see? It's a little bit bigger of a smidge. And now we're going to go, so I've prepared it to that, and I'm putting it there, and it was a little bit shorter. It was about there. So now I should be able to connect that. Let's see what time. Let's see if the angles are correct. So that's at about 9:30. Yay! That's about 9:30. And the last two, you have to do the last two because you're not quite sure where that corner is. You could measure it vertically from there, but you don't know how far up it is. So you've got to put that angle in and that angle in. So let's just do that quickly. So that angle there is at about 9:20. So that angle there is about 9:20. And it's going to go, so you just draw a length. It doesn't matter how long that line is. And we need to find this corner to see how it interacts. That angle there is, just after 2 o'clock. It's a smidge after 2 o'clock. It's somewhere up there. And we've finished drawing the box. And to check, I can go, are those two lines converging at the horizon? Yes, they are. They're going closer together. Are these two lines going closer together? Yes, they are. And are those two lines going closer together? Yes, they are. And there we have drawn a reasonable box. Happy drawing, get drawing, keep drawing. Bye-bye to you all.